All right, guys. What we're going to do is we're going to try and get this whole thing working all simultaneously. And I'm going to try and make a video as well on Facebook. So I want to start recording. Can I do that? Can I do that recording? Yeah, I think so. Let's take that around. All right. I'm recording on two different things. So if it's a little weird, my apologies. There we go. Let's get that lights proper. Nice. Now we have lights. All right. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, wherever you are. I'm Wei T. Lightheart with my Red Ruksha beads. And I want to thank you for joining us tonight for this all-important webinar. Sometimes I'm going to look here. Sometimes I'm going to look up here because I'm recording up here on YouTube. I'm recording live here on Facebook. And of course, we're also on Zoom for those who've joined us on that format. I want a big shout out to all my friends around the planet. And I want to thank you for joining this No BS Rant episode. I think we're at number 5 or something like that. Well, who knows what the number is. We'll get that all worked out. I'm not a numbers guy. But the bottom line is, today we're going to talk about your goals, your dreams, your thoughts, your emotions, and how you've been programmed. How you've been programmed. And this is part and parcel because on Saturday morning I was thinking about this. I recorded a little video in regards to that. It was a little 8-minute video. You can check my Facebook about it. But I've been in marketing I started out on my own business in 1998, and I just did word of mouth marketing for a lot of years. And then I got introduced to the online space in 2004 and started learning the mechanics of marketing. And I'm going to explain where I'm going here. But over the course of those years, I learned a systematic way, if you will, of how the brain works, how your mind works, and how marketing masters can leverage 2 different components inside your brain, okay? And that is your fear response and your pleasure response. So you go to neuro-linguistic programming, which I studied with under Bandler and Grinder, the originators of it. And of course, Tony Robbins ran with that on his stuff. And there's a bunch of people. And Lee Poulos was another guy that was a groundbreaking guy in that area. So if you look, though, there's 2 basic nervous system responses in your body. There's the fear response, which is flight, fight, or freeze. Okay, and so if you get threatened, these are the natural physiological states. And then there's pleasure. And pleasure is generally feeding and breeding. Okay, you want to eat and you want to procreate. And those are the fundamental, I would say, binary drives inside your body. And you've built 2 nervous systems, and you have 2 hemispheres. And your brain is, one part of your brain is trying to figure things out. One's trying to pick up threats, and it's scanning the environment. And then one is looking to, look for these threats, and the other one's looking, where do I eat and how do I procreate? And this is the pleasure and determined as pleasure on one side, feed and breed, fight, flight, or freeze on the other side. Okay, now I won't get into all the technical biological components of that because that's not really important. You just got to understand the mechanism of how you're being played and how you're being programmed. So let's go back in times in your life to think back before you went into formal education school. So when you were a kid, okay, and you're running around and you're grabbing everything at your parents' house. What's this? What's that? You're checking things out. You're putting things in your mouth. You're touching things. You're experimenting. Okay, in a course of 5 years, you go from a babbling infant to being able to walk, a physiological phenomenon that almost no other species on the planet has been able to master, walking on 2 legs when they have 4 limbs. Okay, you figured that out. You figured out how to speak a language. And you can drop a baby into any culture, and it's already starting these verbal pathways. It'll learn that language. You just drop them in there. It'll figure it out. Think about that for a second. Think how difficult maybe learning languages might be. So you learn how to walk, and you learn how to talk, and you learn how to think, and all these sort of things. And your rate of growth in those first 5 years is pretty dramatic. It's pretty impressive of how your neurology starts to connect and grow. And then by the time you're around 7, you realize you're an independent me. You get the full sense of me versus you, that person is different from me or doesn't think the same things that I do, becomes fully realized. And then there's kind of teenage development and then adult developments. But what happened when you got early age is you got put into school, right? And so you took this energetic young being and they put you in a school, they put you in a desk and they made you sit here and they started feeding you information in a quantitative format, probably in a language or learning format that you might not have been good at. And then they give you a grade. They tell you what your value or how successful you are in regurgitating this information presented to you. Now, what does that activate? Well, all of a sudden you start comparing yourself. Well, am I going to fit in with the group? Am I going to get the approval of the teacher, which a lot of kids are looking for? Or are you going to freeze up under pressure? You don't know what to do, and you might stop speaking or stop connecting with people. Or are you going to run? You want to go home. You want to be sick. Because that gets you at home and gets you back to where you're comfortable, back to where your natural genius is, right? And then they schedule the times where you feed, which is also kind of a breed because that's usually your social times. You can't socialize when class is on. You are under the director of the authority, and the authority starts with your teacher. And then they take you into a medical system. And in the medical system, there's a doctor, and he determines your course of health. And then maybe you interact with the legal system. And the legal system has an authority, which is the judge and its police officers and its officials. And then there's the government. When you start working, they're the person that gets a take of every cent that you make from taxes. Okay, whether you like how they're spending it or not, that's the way it goes. But piece by piece, you've been taught to systematically listen to authorities. And you're controlled by these authorities through these two basic mechanisms of fear and pleasure. Most often fear because that activates you more. And so increasingly, what people are experiencing, because we're on an amazing rocket ride of information exposure. So the internet, social media, cell phones, right? These are things that haven't existed in human history. And you got to realize the designers of the people who determine the colors on your Facebook page, the people that put the music in the background of the movie or the advertisement, the people that will put spins, I always call it memes, themes, and schemes out there. You know, for example, I'll give you something common. Right now, I'm an observer of what's happening in the United States. And there's like two kind of clear lines, and you're either supporting of the president or you hate the president. And there's ranges of polarization there on that, right? But ultimately, that's determined. And if you watch the same, so for example, what I would recommend you do is go watch one of the president's speech, because he's kind of like the top-down authority or figurehead of the entire system. Watch one of his speeches, and then go on to, say, Fox News and watch how they interpret the data, and go on, say, CNN News and see how they interpret the data. Same event, radically different storyline. And then comes in the experts, and the experts will amplify the fear. They'll make people get urgent. So some people go out and protest for the president. Some protest against the president, right? Well, why is that? Well, it's largely in part because of the primary message, whatever that headline hook was, okay? The thought, the meme, the structure of whatever that communication is. Then they're going to tie it to the event. Then there's probably going to be some quote unquote authoritative person. And usually that person is authoritative by familiarity. So for example, it's the talk show host. It's the guy reading the news. who's essentially reading it or doing the interviews or whatever, his interpretation of the data. And sometimes if it's a specific expert, they might bring in one or two members that are going to support that view, or they'll stack a panel where there's, you know, a greater majority in support of the message you want, which primarily gang up and team up on the person who's the opposite to quote unquote have a balanced view. So literally they're sifting and setting up and contextualizing a complete view, in this case of the presidency, of which way you want to go. And this is, I'm using this as an example because it happens in virtually everything. The people who are, who think that quote unquote wealthy people should pay high taxes and lower income people should have basic living expenses. There's arguments on both sides of the equation, but depending on which channel you go to, which fear or pleasure points are going to gravitate to which end of the spectrum that you have. Which leads me to this question that I brought up on Saturday. And that is your thoughts, your dreams, and your desires your own? Or are they an inherited set of artifacts? And I'm going to use that term, not artifacts from an archaeology, or it is the rationalizations of what you've been doing inside your life. So think about that for a minute. You go to school, right? I'll use my own thing. So I went to school the first 12 years. They told me, you know what? I know I didn't like school. It was boring school. But they said, yeah, it's going to be so much better at university. I'm like, great. Finally, I get a chance to learn the way that I like. Well, university came along, you know, invested in that. 4 years later, I come out. I have an education I have a bunch of information stuffed in my head, most of which doesn't provide any value in the marketplace as it is. So I've been in school for 16 years, from 6 years old to grade 12, so 6 to 18, and then another 4 years on top of it, 16 years. Not only I don't know what's going on. Number two, I think I have a bunch of ideas that don't work in the real world. I have an education that doesn't work in the real world. And I have this huge debt that's looming over my head that I've got to pay. And because my skill set is so poor relative to the marketplace, I go out and I'm able to get a minimum wage job, which is not enough to support myself in my life. It's not something that offers a lot of value in the world, so that's why it pays low. There's lots of other people that can do that job, and that's why it pays low. And I think that I know better, but I really don't. So that's the other faulty part. So I've got false information. I've bought into a program. I think that I want these things. I think that I wanted a degree. I think I wanted an education. I think I wanted to be recognized in those things, and I was willing to sacrifice my future by going into debt for it, and to not be fully acknowledge that I was not enjoying the process in the first place. Well, how did I get to a situation like this? This might sound like something that you have. And then what happens is you go to work and you get into a relationship, and maybe in that relationship you have a kid or something. And now you have more dependence and more responsibilities. And what does that activate? It activates your fear, your flight, your freeze. You're stuck in this cycle of fear, okay? And you alleviate it. What do you alleviate? How do you get to pleasure? You eat, right? Feel good when you're eating. You have sex. You drink, take a drug, whatever it is. And if you stay too long in fear, what do they say? Well, you're depressed or you have a disorder. So what I'm saying is, with all this technology, with all the TVs and all the news stuff and all this stuff coming in over time, what I'm here to suggest is that most of us are actually living in a perpetual state of fear. And inside that fear, the headlines that come over on their news channels, the Facebook feeds, all that stuff go into two categories. One, that support the fears and motivate me to show up at work the next week, pay the bills, pay the mortgage, pay the government, pay all the authorities that I need to pay off, answer to my boss, do whatever I need to do. Or they're marketing towards me as an escape. I need to escape from the grind and take a spa. I need to escape, or I need to feel important, which is what they do at a restaurant. They feed you food. Someone makes it for you. Someone serves you. Whatever you ask for, they get it. And you get a bill to have that experience of being on the authority chain. Okay. I worked in a restaurant, so I know how this works. And the better they are at making you feel like the ultimate authority, oftentimes the bigger the tip the waiter or waitress will get. Okay. And that's the pleasure principle. Or they'll say, hey, you know what? Why don't you kick back? It's the weekend. You had a hard day's work. Come off to the bar, have a few drinks. Right? Right? Think about it. And then that becomes a cycle. What are you looking for when you're in that bar scene? Well, you're having drinks and you're looking maybe to connect with the opposite sex, but you're too shy because you're too fearful about your mortgage, your bills, and all that sort of stuff. So you sit there nursing your drink until you get enough courage to overcome your fear, or you just get so inebriated with pleasure, forget what's going on. And maybe you connect, maybe you don't. But the bottom line is, the question that lies me is, where does the thoughts, dreams, and desires, where did all that come from? How did you get to that place? How did you get to the place with the 2 kids, the mortgage, the payment on the car, the tax bill, the credit card debt, the job that you hate, all of that? How did you get there? Think about it. Really. And here's what I've come to the conclusion is. You and me and virtually everyone in our sphere of influence got programmed. We got programmed. Now, you see, the education system for the last 150 years was designed to prepare people to work in factories. Now, the problem is those same factories are now being run by robotics. So I'm in Canada. There's a bunch of car companies leaving Canada. There's protests because they're going to move to the States or somewhere else. And the workers are upset and they're protesting because it's a good paying job. My dad used to work in the car. He used to work at a company. We used to work at Ford Motor Plant, and it pays really well. It's pretty tough work. You're in there on a machine all day, hot temperature, putting parts, you're doing the same thing over and over again. Line. It's not easy, but you get paid a lot. So in the workers' world, but what happens is people are protesting because they're taking those plants out, and they're moving that plant. And here's the thing: they're moving the plant because the company knows they can build the new plant with less workers. There's going to be more robots, more artificial intelligence, more algorithms. So they're going to move. And it's easier to move and fire those people and start up a brand new plant with machines instead of people. And this is a trend. I'm going to talk about this. Homo Deus. I wrote it in my book, The Wealthy Backpacker. If you want a copy, I'll tell you how to get that later. I wrote about this 5 years ago when I was living in Bali, Indonesia, and I was sitting there with 250 different people from around the planet, every age, in from 18 to 70s, who were working in the online format. They were leveraging technology. Now, all of those people, none of those people learned how to do that in school. They did it on their own. They did it out of their own interest. They did it out of their own development. And what I'm going to say to you is this: that because of the biological nervous system that you have, you're sucked into these responses. There's a great book out there called Power versus Force, written by Dr. David Hawkins. He was a clinical psychiatrist and an MD who had the largest psychiatric practice in the world. And it's called, the subtitle of that is The Hidden Determinants of Human Behavior. I recommend that everybody read that book. That is probably the only book I've seen that can really help you uncover and unplug the drivers of the insanity of the human condition and how we get hooked into these basic, even how when you're in fear response, how it changes the brain pattern to how it goes through your brain, how you respond to that. Or if you're in a state of pleasure, there's a reason why when you're in Las Vegas, okay, if you're gambling at the table, guess what? You get free drinks and cheap food. The pleasure's there. You're getting You're alleviating, you got the fear of losing and the excitement of winning and the adrenaline and that whole cycle of fear and that anxiety and the rising up on it. And on the other side, you're having drinks, right? To alleviate your awareness of that fear so it doesn't hit you as much. And you're having fun and you're excited and you're eating and drinking and all that stuff. And so it's the perfect storm. It's a complete orchestrated system, right down to the lights and everything they're going to do. So here's what's happening. Because of artificial intelligence, because of digital technology, what's happening is you are now receiving hundreds and hundreds of messages every day, thousands of messages even. Do you know in the average day, you see more marketing messages than your grandparents would see in 20 years in one day? And the subconscious or the subliminal message of all of these messages is that you'll either alleviate pain and suffering with this product, or you will achieve some form of pleasure with this product. It's pretty heavy, right? Now, is that to say that all things that are being marketed online are corrupt or evil? No. The best marketing experts have just figured out how to decode human psychology and how to access it. There's a reason there's over 2 billion people on Facebook, because Facebook is a completely mathematical, algorithm-driven basis to leverage the inner pharmacy to get you to think, to feel, to post, to not post, to read, to connect, all these different things. It's giving you a virtual world in your head, which is determined by these biochemical responses to a fear and pleasure response. Which goes back to the question. Your thoughts, your dreams, and your desires are not your own. The things that you're striving for will not bring you happiness. I'm going to get to the next level, the next income goal, the next status symbol, the right clothes, the right partner, all that, not going to do it. And that's the empty part of the picture. So what happens is a lot of people who are on what I would call the achievement cycle, they move from one achievement to the next achievement to the next achievement to the next achievement. They get a little dopamine hit with achievement and then they realize, what do I got to do? I got to set another goal. I got to set another goal, set another level, man. Got to go take it to the next level. And so that becomes the new addiction. It's the same kind of addiction that's happening for the person that's sitting there drinking beers all day and he can't stop. They got to go have another one. Or the person who's addicted to pain medication, they can't stop because it alleviates the pain. And oftentimes achievement alleviates the pain of the fear of rejection. Okay? This is deep stuff. That's why I'm talking about it. How do you protect yourself against it? Well, first and foremost, you got to get really, really clear about what makes you happy in life. Not anybody else's. What makes you happy? I'll give you an example. About a half hour ago, now maybe 45 minutes ago, I was outside and I had gone to the store. I had to pick up a couple things after my workout. You know, I took a little break because I worked all morning and I know physiologically it's better if I take a break. So I went to the gym, I worked out. That's something that makes me feel good. I went and did a couple errands, went to the bank, picked up some mail, stopped at a store to pick up some supplies that I need. And this is part of my routine of just doing my errands before I come back and talk with you guys. But before I did that, I realized it's a beautiful sunny day. I have this wonderful park next here to this place. I feel very lucky that I have this. It's great. And thank you. I realized it's really nice out. This is a beautiful park. Why don't I take 5 minutes and sit here and look at the park? So I did. I went over and I sat down for 5 minutes and there was a little bird going around the ground, and he was digging at some leftover food that someone had dropped. Thought that was interesting. And the fountains are playing, and the kids were on the swings, and you could see the parents watching over the kids, and some of them were watching on their cell phones. And it was really nice. The sun's shining. It's a beautiful day. I'm happy. I'm totally happy. Now, did it have anything to do with my car? No. Did it have anything to do with my clothes? No. Did it have anything to do with a whole lot of things? No. It's just I was present in the moment and being aware of my surroundings. And yet most of us are locked in on these phones. We're hooked on these phones. We're looking at, I see pictures of big events that, they'll have a big event and people are at the event, not watching the event. They're recording it on their phone. Now, I don't know if they're doing a Facebook Live or they're going to put it somewhere or whatever. And so it's a misuse of the medium. And why are they doing that? To let everybody know they were at the event, but they didn't watch the event. The person watching their phone says, oh, geez, I wish I was at the event. The person at the event is putting it on their phone to let the person know that they missed out on the event. Well, they actually missed out. And the person watching it saw it, but felt that. So it's kind of strange, right? How did we get there? Well, the thing is the problem is, artificial intelligence technology is really, really, really powerful. We have these computers now. I mean, your phone is like 1 million times more powerful than what, NASA had 10 million times when they put people on the moon. Okay, we've got all this tech and we don't know how to use it. We didn't have an education to how to use our phone. We didn't have an education of how to leverage social media in a way that uplifts our lives as opposed to take away from it. We didn't know how to use emails in a way that didn't have us wasting a bunch of time answering emails, but we're actually using them for what they were doing, as a quick way to send a letter. Okay? So you start thinking about all this sort of stuff. And here's the thing. Our education system has taught us, and the marketing systems out there has taught us to stay in the cycle of a rut, to stay in this, what I would call this unhappiness cycle. That is just simply hitting their buttons, fear, pleasure, fear, pleasure, fear, pleasure, fear, pleasure. And we're kind of going around with an automaton hitting buttons like a rat on the pellet. The science experience, like how many times will the rat hit the pellet to get the food? So how many times will you show up at work so that you and your family eat? Even if you hate it. Well, probably a lot. Because your identity is who you are as a person, what you do as a person, how you're seen in that society, and excommunication from those ideas. What do you feel? You feel fear. And when you feel fear, what happens is your brain will write a story. And that story is going to be called a rationalization. You're rationalizing what you're scared of. You're making a story up because you're fearful of something. You're terrified of it. You're worried about it. You have anxiety about it, which you've suppressed through these little dopamine hits by clicking on your phone or clicking on your thing, getting it. So it's like a drug effect. It's literally a drug effect like cocaine or booze. So you're caught in that cycle of hitting the pellet to alleviate the fear. And then you start writing stories out of that. And that story says, well, I can't give up my pension. If I just another 20 years, I'll get that pension. Look, if I just keep paying taxes here, when I get done, the government will take care of me when I'm in my 70s. Well, what happens if the Social Security system breaks? The Wall Street Journal just reported the other day that right now in the United States of America, they are actually paying out more in Social Security than they're taking in. It's official now because there's so many baby boomers retire, and that's just going to start to scale exponentially. And those people are going to pull money out of the stock market, and that's going to draw the stock market prices down, and that's going to cause companies to stop contraction of hiring, and that will trigger the interest rates to start going up and borrowing ups, and then contraction of the economy. It's demographics, okay? And everybody just wants to print more money or throw more things or blame the policies on other people. It's just a cycle, which is a cycle of people not understanding what actually makes you happy, what actually controls progress, and what actually drives the economy. And what drives the economy? Belief. Belief it's going to work. What drives your lifestyle, your goals, your dreams? The belief that they're going to work. But if you're surrounding yourself with a group of people who are programmed to keep you in that social economic status that you're currently in, your friends, your family, your relationships, all that sort of stuff, you are going to pay attention to the memes that hold you in that place, and you are going to disassociate from the things that will get you out of it. And you will write stories. You know, recently I had someone on my Facebook page tell me that I was a fraud, right? Straight up. What was interesting, on one thing, he was promoting a particular religion, and at the same time calling me a fraud, which kind of interesting how you can have kind of two. And that's that's the type of behavior you'll see with people. You'll see humans that don't seem to be consistent, and that's because they didn't come up with the programs. The two programs, the fear and pleasure programs, are actually jamming them and causing a freeze because the nervous system doesn't know what to do. You stay in the job that you're supposed to do because you're paralyzed by fear. You run from taking the steps that you need to. You avoid learning what you need to learn because you're running from it. You fight with the people around you to rationalize why you don't take that shot, why you don't take that risk. Well, what if we lose the house? What if we lose this? What, we got to feed the kids, all these sort of things. And maybe that's true to a certain extent. Maybe it is. But the question is that brings me to the final piece is your thoughts, dreams, and desires. Are they yours? How did you get yours? Where did you come up with them? And why haven't you gotten them if you're still on that pipeline? Because once you achieve them, and if you look at the people who are the most successful in life, they're driven by a purpose. In other words, their daily action is a purpose. So for a mother, right? Let's say it in a traditional sense, her purpose becomes her children. Oftentimes, you see that a lot. That was the case with my mom. She was very, traditional type motherhood. She was purpose-oriented. A businessman might develop his purpose with the mission of the company. Might be the bottom line. Maybe he wants to be a billionaire. Doesn't matter. The purpose that a person has is intrinsic. What they feel is how they extract meaning or value out of the world. And what I would suggest is that you find out what's your purpose, your cause, and your passion. And if you can't follow that all the time, start following it a little bit until it drives you, because that's going to reopen up your brain. Your purpose, your cause, and passion is going to take you out of the fear and pleasure cycle and drive you into a whole other thing, which is where meaning is derived from. This is where greatness comes from. This is where artistic expression comes from. This is where the great geniuses operate from. And this is where your genius is locked up. So you were a genius till you went into school. You learned how to walk. You learned how to talk. You learned how to move around in the world. You learned a new language, maybe a couple. All before the age of 6. Right? You didn't even have a fully developed brain and you developed all that stuff. What do you mean you're not a genius? Of course you're a genius. The thing is, you probably haven't discovered what your genius is, or you've been too scared to pursue your genius because of fear. That's a lot to think about. It's a lot to consider. And I certainly didn't lay off the conjecture. So how do you protect yourself from this? Number one, okay, recognize this. Everything that you see on TV is going through a filter. Everything you see on the internet is going through a filter. Everything that you read is going through the filter. So for the next week, I would like for you to make notes about how does this make me feel and what are the associated thoughts that come up from this moment. Just write down. Next thing, write down or make note of, take a picture of the headlines that you notice, whether it's on the news, whether it's on the newspaper, whether it's on magazines when you walk by? What catches your eye? Make a note of it. What are the associated thoughts? Do you walk by the magazine rack, see the fit person and go, oh, geez, you know what? I need to work on my fitness. Do you see a piece on this on CNN, and it's a political piece, and you go, you know what? I need to vote, or I need to take action, or get empowered with the movement. Or when you listen to someone, what is it that you're hearing from them? Are you actually hearing them? Or is that going through your own filter? Chances are it's going through your own filter. I don't know what's going on with my camera up there, but we're trying to see if it's working. Kicked out, maybe that's what it was. I don't know. So bottom line is, try those things as an experiment. Try to work out those things as an experiment and see what happens. The bottom line is you're going to be shocked that you have impression and then you have associated thoughts. And are those associated thoughts uplifting or allowing you to take action, to move forward, to grow, to develop? To think about that kid that was testing everything in the house, right? Putting things in your mouth, testing everything. Can I eat it? Can I touch it? What can I do with it? What is it? Asking questions about it. What is this? How is this? All that sort of stuff. That's where your genius is. That's your natural state. And that state got ripped out of you by a propaganda program that used memes, themes, and schemes to hook you into a life that will guarantee that you will end up, or virtually guarantee that you're going to end up broke, unhappy, and dependent on other people. But there's a way out. But understand the physiological game that you're hooked in. Understand that you are hooked into this deep, and the only way out is to understand that. Number two, the next thing is to feel the fear, take action anyways. The third thing is to get around a group of supportive people who have also been programmed, but are committed to getting out of that program, that are committing to breaking out of the chain, breaking out of the cycle, the family cycle, the nation state cycle, the education cycle, the social cycle, all of these things. Because anytime that you start, like we all naturally identify with groups, but just make sure the group you're identifying with is taking you in the direction towards your goals, your dreams, your desires, what makes you intrinsically happy, not the group that takes you away from it. And think, how many hours are you spending at work? How many hours are you spending at commute? Who are you listening to on the commute? Who are you watching on the television? Does this uplift you or does this bring you down? Use that as the filter. Do you feel better or do you end up feeling worse? Does this food make you feel good or does it make you feel good and then guilty after? Right? Start monitoring these things in your life and you will start to realize that you're actually an automaton, that you're kind of doing the same thing over and over again, kind of falling on this cycle and not really taking 5 minutes to sit out there, enjoy nature, enjoy the world, enjoy the present moment as it is. And it's because of this system that has manipulated you into being a slave. That's right. A slave to it. You're a slave to your desires. You're a slave to the dreams that got programmed into you. You're a slave to the program. And the sick part is that you didn't even know you got programmed. It's heavy. It's a heavy statement. So how do you get out of it? I can't answer that question for you. I give you some suggestions. How did I get out of it? And I'm not, how did I get out of some levels of it? I'm sure on some levels I still have these programs. In fact, I have a host of professional people that help me unplug the programs of my life, which have been endless. I'm in my mid-40s. I've been doing this since I was 22 years old. I started to realize it when I was 18, but 22, I really started to realize it. So the reality is, yeah, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes groups, it takes all-out massive action, it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of enthusiasm, it takes resilience, it takes the willingness to fail repeatedly for an extended period of time at a personal cost to yourself. Because you have to realize is that child, how many times did it take you to walk? How many times did you fall down before you got up? How many times did you try a word until you could speak it for the first time? Probably a lot. Now, because you didn't have a grading system, because you didn't have a status system, because you didn't have any of that stuff that was learned in your education program, you didn't have to do that. And the great news is this. You're watching this. The world is on this way. The reality is this. Never before have we been able to go off and find the experts or the people can influence us, the greatest minds in the world, the greatest business people in the world, the greatest philanthropists in the world, the greatest artists in the world. The greatest of everything is now available to you on your computer 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can listen to the best psychologists, the best physicists, the best scientists, the best doctors, the best health experts, the best everything. It's all there. Someone's willing to reach out to you and do that. So what you need to do is you need to start your education over again. And I call it the education of empowerment, the education of inspiration, the education that will open you up to question what currently is and to ask yourself, how do you achieve what's possible in your life? How do you activate your inner genius that got shut down however many years ago? And recognize that you have genius in you. You have greatness in you. You have happiness in you. You have sadness and joy and pain. All is inside of you because it's all represented and determined by a biochemical response to your situation in life as it is. And if you can change how you see the world, you can ultimately change anything in your life. And in order to do that, that takes an extraordinary amount of focus. And it takes a group of people to help support you in that journey, and it's available to you today. It's available to you. Go out and find it. Go out and look for it. Don't take no for an answer. Recognize that you've been programmed. I've been programmed. You've been programmed. And recognize there's a way out. And the way out's a better program. And what do you need to get out of the program? Number one, you need to be able to make enough money that you don't have to go to your job. Number one, whatever lifestyle it is, you determine what it is. Okay. Number two, you got to spend enough time on your health that you're able to still continue your job and that you have enough energy to go after your part-time deal that helps pull you out of that. Right. And number three, you need some program that's going to help replace the old system, your old support system that keeps you on the cycle that never quite gives you what you want. It's kind of like the carrot in front of the horse marching. You need to recognize you need a replacement for that. In order to do that, you need to figure out what you want. You need to keep your health in order so you have enough energy. And then you need a program on the other side to get you out until you can eventually escape. I've done that. I've been there. I've done that. I left the system first time. 1998 was one system. I got out of the employment system and I got into the working for myself system. Then I moved into the online format and I was able to free myself out of that within a couple years. Got to live all over the world by 2005. So it's 2005. This is my office right here. This computer, that's what it is. It can be anywhere, right? 2007, I got into a system of helping people free themselves financially when they had been locked in that cycle. And that sounds really cheesy, and I'm not saying they become millionaires and stuff. Some did. But it's more or less that you're able to find a way to make money so that you could find out what you really wanted to do. And then we started this. We started the Digital Republic. In the Digital Republic, straight up, is a group of individuals who understand that they've been programmed by the system. They understand that they want to escape it, and they're willing to work together in order to do that. That's what the digital republic is. Your only qualifications for it is that you have a willingness to change, a willingness to learn, and a willingness to work for as long as it takes. And the reality is, you're looking at 24 months, 24 to 60 months, 2 to 5 years. 2 to 5 years, and you can break out of the cycle. 2 to 5 years, you can get the education that you want, that you can understand the marketing system, and you can leverage the same technology that's going to replace your job, because 47% of the jobs, right here, 47% of the jobs that exist today will not exist by 2033. So take yourself 15 years into the future. There's a 1 in 2 chance, basically, that whatever you're doing doesn't exist. And there's a pretty much certain chance that there will be no Social Security for you at the end of the rainbow, either from your pension program or from the government program. So what are you going to do? Stay on the program, get wiped out? Or are you going to reach for your dreams? Are you going to reach for your real goals? Are you going to discover who you are and the amazing genius and capabilities? Are you going to get technology working for you? Or are you going to be a victim of it and have it working against you? Are you going to get entrenched systems to advance your life? Or are you going to let those entrenched systems hold you back? Are you going to celebrate and acknowledge the people and systems who are pushing to push humanity to the next level? Or are you going to criticize those people because they belong to a group that's not your own? Choice is yours. Think about it. I'm YT Lightheart from the Digital Republic. I've hoped you enjoyed this no BS rant on propaganda, your hopes, dreams, desires, the themes, the memes, and the schemes that are holding you back from your true self. See you next Monday night.